You're bathing my son like a stray dog. The voice lashes through the warm California air like a whip. Ethan Cole freezes garden hose still running in his hand. Droplets catch the late afternoon light scattering into tiny rainbows as they fall over Mason's dark curls. The boy sits in a wide plastic tub on the stone patio, giggling little fists pounding the water into frothy splashes. For a breathless second, everything halts: the breeze, the laughter, even the shimmer of the water in the sun. Vanessa Carrington stands at the edge of the marble path, stilettos biting into the grout between the tiles. Her perfectly tailored black pantsuit is rumpled from haste, the sunglasses perched on her nose failing to hide the steel in her eyes. She's not supposed to be here. The board meeting in San Francisco was meant to run late. Yet here she is, home early and not liking what she's seeing. Ethan turns slowly, setting the hose down with deliberate care. His uniform shirt is half-wet sleeves rolled up to forearms flecked with freckles and dried droplets. He doesn't speak. Neither does Mason, who blinks up at the woman in the doorway. The boy's smile doesn't vanish. It just pauses, as if waiting for permission to keep it. "I asked you a question," Vanessa says again, voice sharper. Ethan stands to his full height, meeting her gaze with a calm that only deepens her irritation. "He got muddy," he answers simply. "He was playing, and your first thought was to drag him outside and spray him down like..." She breaks off, hand slicing the air. "Like this." Mason laughs again, oblivious, sending a fresh wave of water over Ethan's pants. Ethan doesn't even look down. "I didn't drag him anywhere. He asked for water time. He laughed, Ms. Carrington." He laughed. Vanessa's jaw tightens. "My son had music therapy at 3 structured play at 4. I come home to find him half naked in a plastic bin while my janitor plays summer camp." "You came home early," Ethan replies evenly. "That's not the point." "No," he says. "But maybe it's the problem." Her eyes flash. "Excuse me." Ethan crouches beside Mason again. The boy reaches up, tiny fingers hooking around one of his shirt buttons. Ethan's voice softens. "You know what he told me when I filled this tub? Daddy used to fill water here. No more water time. Mommy doesn't like mess." Vanessa flinches almost imperceptibly. "I didn't plan this," Ethan continues. The upstairs water was off for pipe work. He was already muddy. Sun was out, hose was near, and he wanted to laugh. Mason holds up a plastic dinosaur. "Rawr," he whispers to his mother, offering it like a peace treaty. It doesn't work. "Mr. Cole," Vanessa says coolly, "you're here to clean floors, not parent my child." And yet Ethan replies, "Gaze steady. You left him with me." The silence that follows is sharper than her words. She hates that it stings. Ethan wraps Mason in a towel with the ease of someone who's done it before. The boy leans into him without hesitation. Vanessa notices and hates noticing. "You're dismissed for the day," she says, brittle. "HR will follow up." "I'm not on contract," he answers. "Day-to-day hire. You want me gone, say the word. But maybe ask your son first." She opens her mouth, but nothing comes out. Mason's still damp looks from one to the other. "Happy," he says softly. Vanessa blinks. "What?" He points at Ethan. "We happy." The words land in her chest like stones dropped into deep water. Ethan doesn't gloat, doesn't smile. He simply hands Mason to the nanny, who's appeared silently at the back door, then collects his cleaning cart and wheels it away. Vanessa stands there long after the patio stops dripping, unsure what she hates more, the mess or the way her son looked at the janitor, like he was the safest place in the world. That night, long after Mason's bedtime, Vanessa sits alone in her kitchen espresso, cooling untouched on the marble island. Her executive assistant, Rachel, stands opposite, tablet in hand. "I want a full background check on him," Vanessa says without looking up. Rachel blinks. "The janitor." "Yes, the janitor." The marble gleams under the lights. Everything is pristine except the inside of Vanessa's chest, which feels cracked open since that scene on the patio. Rachel hesitates, then taps the request into her screen. "Ethan Cole. He's only been here 6 weeks." "Exactly. And in 6 weeks, my son says more to him than to his own mother." "That's not necessarily bad," Rachel offers cautiously. "Some people have warm energy, especially with kids." Vanessa's gaze sharpens. "I need to know who he is, before I let him put another drop of water on my child. 2 hours later, Rachel returns to Vanessa's home office. Vanessa is staring at architectural blueprints on her desk, but her eyes aren't following the lines. "Here it is," Rachel says, placing a folder on the desk. Vanessa flips it open, her polished nails tapping against the paper. The first page shows Ethan's name and birth date, then a concise timeline of his career. Former structural engineer Montrose and Klein in Seattle, multiple awards for sustainable housing projects. A small photograph from an old press release catches her eye. Ethan clean-shaven shaking hands with a mayor while holding a plaque. Rachel continues master's from Stanford. Married. Wife passed away 3 years ago, childbirth complications. 1 son. No criminal record. No debts. Clean as snow. Vanessa turns another page. There's a Seattle Times clipping with the headline, "Young Engineer Wins National Humanitarian Award for Green Community Design." In the photo, Ethan is smiling a small girl from the project's pilot shelter perched on his hip. Her voice is flat. "Why is he a janitor?" Rachel shrugs. After his wife died, he walked away from everything. Took custody of his son, moved here. Started picking up odd jobs. Odd jobs? Vanessa repeats, her eyes still scanning the file. I guess floors are quieter than grief. The line hangs between them. Vanessa closes the folder. He's too involved with Mason. Rachel frowns. Too involved, or just involved? Vanessa stands and walks to the window. Outside the garden is spotless, the stone patio still faintly wet from earlier. Mason's attaching to him. That's not healthy. I don't need someone who plays parent. I need someone who does their job. Rachel hesitates. Maybe he's doing the job you didn't know your son needed most. Vanessa turns sharply. You're speaking out of line. Rachel doesn't flinch. No. I'm speaking as someone who watched a little boy cry for the first time because someone left. The words land harder than Vanessa expects. She straightens her shoulders. I want him gone by the end of the day. Make sure he understands it's not personal. In the late afternoon, Rachel finds Ethan in the garage wiping down a maintenance cart. The faint smell of lemon cleaner hangs in the air. She holds out an envelope. Vanessa's making a staffing change. Ethan glances at the envelope, then at her. I figured. No one's angry, Rachel says quickly. She just prefers more structure. Ethan wipes his hands on a rag, then leans back against the workbench. She runs her life like a blueprint. I'm a stain she can't scrub out. Rachel smiles faintly. Maybe you're more like a misdrawn line, the kind that changes the whole design for the better. For the first time, something like gratitude flickers in his tired eyes. Tell her... He stops, then tries again. Tell her Mason never cried with me, but he always missed her. That evening, the house is unusually quiet. Vanessa walks past Mason's room, expecting to hear giggles or the murmur of a bedtime story. Instead, there's nothing, just the faint hum of the air conditioning. She pushes the door open. Mason is lying on his back, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Sweetheart, it's time to sleep, she says softly. He doesn't turn his head. Would you like your book? No answer. She sits on the edge of his bed and rests her hand on his small back, warm, unmoving, then barely above a whisper. Did Daddy go away? Her breath catches. What? Daddy? Ethan Mason murmurs. Did he leave? Because I laughed too loud. The question pierces through layers Vanessa didn't know she had. She wants to say no, to tell him that wasn't it at all, but the truth tangles between her throat and her pride. He just had to go home, honey. Mason blinks slowly. I don't like home when he's not here. The words leave her sitting in the dark long after his eyes close, the echo of them following her down the hall. The next afternoon, Vanessa stands in the upstairs hallway outside the bathroom. Steam curls under the door. Mason's new nanny, a woman with an impeccable resume and the emotional warmth of a marble countertop, is inside with him. Through the crack, Vanessa hears Mason's voice, high, trembling. No water. No water. The nanny's tone is brisk. You love baths, Mason. Come now, in you go. Vanessa steps inside. The tub is already full, lavender-scented bubbles stacked high, rubber ducks bobbing on the surface. Mason stands beside it, fists clenched at his sides, shaking. "Try again," the nanny says, reaching for his wrist. Mason jerks back. "Stop! Let him be!" Vanessa says sharply. Louder than she meant to. The nanny blinks. "Ma'am, if we give in, we set a precedent." "I'll pay your full rate," Vanessa interrupts. "But please leave for the day." There's a moment of tension, but the nanny finally obeys, gathering her bag and clicking down the hall. When the door shuts behind her, the air in the bathroom loosens. Vanessa crouches, bringing herself level with Mason. "Hey," she says gently. His face is blotchy, his nose running. "No water," he whispers. "But you love water," she reminds him softly. "You loved it yesterday." "Not with her," Mason insists. Vanessa tilts her head. "Why not?" He looks up, lip trembling. "Because she doesn't laugh." 3 words, and something inside Vanessa splits wide open. She sits by the tub, unsure of what to do next. Her fingers fidget in her lap. Mason sniffs from the corner, arms wrapped around his knees. "You want me to read you something?" she asks. He shakes his head. "I could put on your music." Another shake. The silence thickens until it's almost unbearable. Then, without thinking too much, Vanessa rolls up her silk sleeves, dips her hand into the water, and splashes. Mason looks up, startled. "Did you hear that?" she whispers, eyes wide with mock seriousness. He blinks. "I think she says slowly, 'There's a water monster in here. A very naughty one.'" She splashes again, bigger this time. Mason's lip twitches. She splashes once more, sending water onto her blouse. She gasps dramatically. "He got me, Mason. Help! Only you can stop him." There's a pause, then a giggle, small, fragile, but real. Mason crawls toward the tub, dips a hand in, then a foot. Splash! Water erupts everywhere, soaking her from head to toe. Her expensive shirt clings to her ribs. Her hair falls out of place, but she's laughing. Not polite, controlled laughter, but the kind that leaves her breathless. "Got him!" Mason shouts, stomping in the tub. "You did!" she says, grinning. For the first time in a long time, Vanessa Carrington Titan of glass towers and billion-dollar deals sits cross-legged on a tile floor, drenched and smiling because her son is laughing with her, and yet deep down she knows she hasn't won. She's only remembered. That night she dries Mason off herself, helps him into pajamas, and kisses a small bruise on his shin without thinking. Mommy, Mason says, as she tucks him in, "Yes, baby. Can we go find Daddy Ethan?" Her heart twists. He had to go back to his home, sweetie. Mason's eyes are heavy-lidded. "Home is where people wait for you," he murmurs. "I'm waiting here." Vanessa sits there long after he drifts to sleep, his words pressing against her chest. The attic smells faintly of cedar and dust, the air heavy with the kind of quiet that feels untouched for years. Vanessa's heels click softly on the wooden boards as she moves past boxes labeled in Rachel's tidy handwriting. Financials 2019 Press Kits Legal Archives. One pushed into the corner catches her attention. Staff Temporary 1099 Archive. She drags it out, the cardboard scuffing the floor. Inside are old payroll copies and onboarding forms. Near the bottom, she finds a slim manila folder with a name typed neatly across the tab. Ethan Cole. Sinking down cross-legged in her linen slacks, she opens it. The resume is laid out in plain, blocky font bachelor's and civil engineering master's from Stanford. Glowing letters of recommendation from CEOs, nonprofit directors, and even a former mayor. Taped inside is a crumpled newspaper clipping from the Seattle Times engineer wins National Humanitarian Award for Green Community Design. The photo shows a younger Ethan in a collared shirt smiling into a sea of camera flashes, holding a small girl on his hip. The caption says she's from the project's pilot shelter, but the way he holds her is something else entirely protective certain. Beneath the article, a worn envelope hides a stack of hand-drawn blueprints. The first is for a community center shaped like a semicircle, its courtyard framed by trees and curved benches like open arms, rainwater harvesting tanks, reading nooks, sand and water play areas, all labeled in his neat handwriting. At the bottom, "If we build like children deserve to be happy, the world might finally listen." Another sheet is marked Dream Draft Only. This one is personal. a modest house with one master room, one child's room, a central kitchen flooded with light, and a wraparound porch. Below the title box, "For Laura, for who we would have become." Vanessa exhales slowly. This isn't a janitor. This is a man who once designed futures. The next afternoon, Vanessa pulls into a quiet street lined with faded fences and chalk drawings on driveways. Ethan's bungalow is small, its porch steps cracked a set of wind chimes whispering in the breeze. When he opens the door, he's in jeans and a gray t-shirt, a dish towel in his hand. His eyes flicker with surprise. "Miss Carrington, I wanted to talk." He steps aside. "You came all this way. I found your plans," she says once inside. "The house, the shelter, the community circle. They're beautiful." He doesn't move. "I didn't know," she adds. "About Laura, about your work, about what you gave up." "I wasn't hiding it," he says, folding the towel with slow precision. "I just wasn't offering." "Why this job?" she asks. His gaze is steady. "Because the only place my son heard another child laugh was your backyard." The answer is a blow she doesn't see coming. "I took the job to pay bills." He continues quietly. "I stayed because Mason found someone to echo with. You were building silence around him. I couldn't let him forget what joy sounded like." Vanessa swallows hard. "Do you think I'm a bad mother?" "I think you're scared," he says simply. "Of noise, of losing control, of getting it wrong." She blinks, fighting the tightness in her throat. "I was just trying to protect him." "Then start by protecting what matters," he says. "Not the schedule, not the image, just his heart." There's a long pause. Her voice wavers. "Would you ever finish the project, the one for the kids?" He looks away. "I don't know. What if I helped?" she offers. His eyes turn to hers, then searching, measured. "Why would you want to build something like that?" Her answer is softer than she expects. "Because I'm starting to realize I've built a life no one wants to live inside." The storm comes in sudden, heavy-handed sheets, hammering the glass panels of Vanessa's sunroom and turning the ivy on the walls into dripping curtains. Thunder rolls somewhere beyond the hills, low and insistent, like a warning she's already too late to heed. She's in her office phone to her ear. "Did you reschedule the board call?" "Yes, ma'am," Rachel replies. There's a pause. "But there's another issue." Vanessa's brow tightens. What issue? Mason's not in his room. Vanessa straightens. "What do you mean, not in his room?" "I mean..." Rachel's voice drops. "He's outside. In the rain." The phone slips from Vanessa's hand, bouncing off the armchair as she's already moving. The backyard is chaos water pooling across the patio concrete, slick under her heels, rain blurring everything into a smear of silver and green. She spots him under the table, knees tucked to his chest, hoodie soaked through small body trembling. She drops to her knees beside him, pulling him into her arms. "Mason, what are you doing out here?" His lips are tinged blue. "Water time," he murmurs, "waiting for Daddy Ethan." The words tear something clean in two inside her. She scoops him up and runs for the door, shouting for towels, blankets, call the doctor now. By evening, the fever sets in. Mason's cheeks burn against her palm, his small hand limp in hers. The pediatrician's voice is calm but grave. "Watch him tonight. Stay close." She sits beside his bed machines, humming softly in the background. Rachel slips in with a tray of soup, setting it down untouched. Vanessa's voice is low, like admitting it too loudly would make it worse. "He went looking for him. For Ethan. He thought he was coming." Rachel nods gently. "Because Ethan always did. I fired the only person he trusted." Vanessa says, staring at the rise and fall of Mason's chest. "And now I'm watching my son breathe like it's a maybe." Rachel rests a hand on her shoulder. "Do you want me to call him?" Vanessa swallows hard. "No. He already left once. Why would he come back again?" Rachel doesn't answer, but Vanessa can see in her assistant's eyes that she's wrong. He would. The night stretches thin and sleepless. Vanessa sits with her head resting on her arm, Mason's damp curls tangled under her fingertips. Across the hall, the blueprints Ethan once drew are still spread out on her desk, one folded neatly. The small house with the wraparound porch. She's memorized every inch of it. Her eyes drift back to Mason's pale face. Because I didn't, she whispers to the name scribbled at the bottom of the sketch. But I will now. By morning, the fever breaks. Relief comes in a shaky exhale she doesn't bother hiding. She kisses his damp forehead, murmuring, "Hi, baby." Mason blinks up at her. "Did Daddy Ethan come?" She shakes her head. "No, sweetheart. But Mommy's here." He's quiet for a moment. "I waited," he says. "I know, I got cold. I know, love." Then with a whisper that shatters her, "Was I bad?" Her voice sharpens fierce. "No, you were never bad. You were just braver than I was ready for." Later that day, after Mason finally drifts into a deep, steady sleep, Vanessa goes into her office. The windows are still streaked with rain, the storm passed but leaving its marks. She picks up her phone without hesitation this time and dials. It rings twice. Ethan Cole. His voice is steady but not warm. "It's me," she says. "Vanessa." A pause. "I figured." Mason got sick. She begins cutting straight through the formality. "He went outside in the rain looking for you. I didn't know how much he'd held on to you, how much you mattered." Her voice cracks. "I thought structure could replace presence. I thought safety meant walls. But I forgot children don't need protection from joy." There's a silence on the other end, heavy but alive. "Is he okay?" Ethan asks quietly. "He's stable. Better now." She swallows. "I shouldn't have let you go. That's not about professionalism or image." "That's me." Finally being honest. He's quiet for a beat, then says, "I didn't stay for you. I know, I stayed for him." Vanessa closes her eyes. "And now I'm asking you to come back." "For him," Ethan says, "or for you, I—" Her voice falters. "I don't know how to ask for things I don't deserve." "Then maybe don't ask," he says. "Just let me choose." She exhales. "I hope you choose us." "I already did," he replies. "You just didn't see it." That evening, the front door opens with barely a sound. Ethan steps inside the fading sunlight, catching the damp edges of his jacket. He doesn't announce himself, doesn't linger in the hallway, just moves quietly toward Mason's room like he's done it 100 times before. Vanessa is already there, sitting in the chair by the bed. Mason stirs at the shift in the air, eyelids fluttering open. The moment he sees Ethan in the doorway, a sleepy smile spreads across his face. "Daddy, Ethan," he whispers. Ethan steps forward, drops to one knee, and takes the boy's hand gently. "I heard you waited," he says softly. Mason nods, eyes half closed. "Thank you for waiting." Vanessa watches from the side, her arms not crossed in defense this time, but resting in her lap. For once, she doesn't feel like a CEO managing a crisis, just a mother witnessing her child's world click back into place. In the days that follow, there's no formal truce between Vanessa and Ethan, no big conversation to settle the air. He works. She works. Mason laughs more. That's enough for now. Still restlessness shadows Vanessa. She can't shake the sense that something bigger is pressing at the edges. One night, unable to sleep, she finds herself in the old library, her mother's room. The air smells faintly of pipe smoke and Chanel, as if the years between then and now hadn't really happened. She moves to the far corner where a particular bookshelf has always felt heavier than the others. Pressing behind a row of biographies, her fingers find the hidden latch. A click, and the bottom panel swings open, revealing a slim leather folder tied with crimson ribbon. The paper inside is yellowed, but the ink is bold. At the top, in her mother's elegant handwriting, "To my daughter, if she ever decides to stop pretending. You were born into a world I built to protect you. But I see now that I raised you behind glass, shiny, strong, untouchable. A daughter no one could crack, not even herself. You think parenting is about outcomes, about making sure they succeed, but it isn't. It's about being the place they fall when the world is too much. It's about being there, not being perfect. If you're reading this, you've likely broken something, or something has broken you. Good. That means you're finally soft enough to feel finally real enough to begin. A child doesn't need a CEO. They need someone who stays, someone who listens when they have nothing left to say. So if you're still trying to be the woman the world claps for, I beg you be the one your child runs to instead. By the third read, the words blur behind her tears. Vanessa presses the letter to her chest, whispering into the quiet. You knew all this time. The next morning, she finds Ethan in the kitchen, wiping down the counter, Mason busy stacking cereal pieces into a precarious tower at the table. She sets the letter on the counter in front of him. It's from my mother, she says. She died before Mason was born. We didn't get along. Ethan scans the first few lines, then pauses. She sounds like she knew more than she let on. She always did. He folds the letter carefully and sets it back down. Thank you for showing me. Vanessa hesitates. Do you think people like us get second chances? Ethan pours her coffee, black, no sugar, exactly how he's seen her take it, and sets it in front of her. Only if we stop using the first one to prove we were right. She stares at the steam curling up from the cup. I've spent my whole life proving things. I know. His voice is gentle. What now? She asks quietly. He leans against the counter, the hint of a smile at his mouth. Maybe start proving you're here. The lot looks smaller than Vanessa imagined. Cracked cement weeds threading up through the gravel, a rusted garden gate leaning against one hinge. Yet Ethan stands at its center like it's still exactly what it was meant to be, the beginning of something. Vanessa lingers by her car trench coat pulled close against the breeze. She's not wearing heels today, just sneakers that still look new, soles barely touched by dirt. I didn't think you'd come, Ethan says without turning. I didn't think you'd remember where this place was, she answers, stepping closer. I didn't, she admits after a pause. Rachel did. That earns a faint smile from him, but his eyes stay on the lot. She comes to stand beside him. The wind tugs at her collar. What stopped you from building it? The day I got the permits, he says quietly. Laura died. Vanessa doesn't speak. She was 26, bright, stubborn, wild. Said if we couldn't have more kids, we'd raise everyone else's. He crouches down, letting the dirt sift between his fingers. I brought our son here when he was 3 months old, stood right in this spot, and whispered to the ground, I'm sorry. Sorry for what? For surviving. For folding the dream instead of carrying it. The wind picks up, rustling a candy wrapper across the gravel. Vanessa crouches beside him, resting her hand lightly on the blueprint case slung under his arm. Unfold it, she says. He glances at her. You said yourself, she continues, this place was drawn with love, pain, and hope. That's exactly the kind of foundation it needs. He doesn't answer. Instead, he stands and unrolls the plans across the hood of her car. The paper edges curl in the breeze, but the vision is still clear. Rooms shaped like open arms, curved walls to soften corners, sunlight streaming into every space. Vanessa traces a line with her finger. You built this for children who don't get to be children, he says. She looks up at him, something unspoken in her eyes. Then let's make sure this time they do. By noon, they're both working. Ethan measures ground lines and recalibrates where the garden wall should shift. Vanessa holds stakes sketching adjustments with him, her white button-down smudged with dirt. You're not afraid to get dirty, he says, glancing at her shirt. I've spent years in clean boardrooms building cold empires, she replies. Turns out mud is healing. Careful, he teases. That almost sounded poetic. Don't get used to it. They fall into an easy rhythm hammer measure mark until she suddenly stops looking down at her hands. They're shaking, she says. He walks over, taking her fingers gently. You're not used to labor. Give it time. She shakes her head. That's not it. I'm scared. Of what? She glances toward the lot, the open sky, the exposed possibility of it all. I'm scared this isn't enough, that it's just another project, that it won't heal him. Or me. Ethan's voice drops. Healing doesn't come from the roof or the walls. It comes from who stays inside them. Her eyes glisten. What if I still don't know how to stay? Then start small, he says. Stay for the next conversation, the next splash, the next laugh. He lets go of her hand, smiling faintly. You don't build a home in one day. You build it moment by moment. A small red hoodie comes bobbing down the dirt path, Mason's boots splashing in a leftover puddle. Rachel trails behind a paper bag in hand, waving from a distance. Mom Mason shouts, breathless with excitement, "Why are your pants dirty?" Vanessa wipes her brow with the back of her wrist, leaving a streak of mud across her cheek. "Because I helped Daddy Ethan dig a foundation." "You digged?" Mason's eyes go wide. Ethan crouches down to meet him. "We dug Buddy." Mason grins. "Can I help dig too?" Vanessa glances at Ethan. There's a brief pause, then she nods. "Absolutely." Rachel sets the bag down on the tailgate of Ethan's truck, pulling out sandwiches. Fuel for the construction crew. Her eyes drift between Vanessa's mud-smeared shirt and Ethan's matching dirt-caked boots, a small smirk forming. "Who are you?" she teases. Vanessa arches a brow. "Someone under reconstruction." Rachel chuckles. "It suits you." They eat sitting on overturned buckets, Mason wedged between them. He keeps scooping at the dirt with his little plastic shovel, convinced he's making the deepest hole in the world. As the sun lowers, long shadows stretch over the bare ground. Vanessa stands with Ethan, watching Mason chase a butterfly across the lot. "This is the first time I've built something without expecting applause," she says quietly. Ethan studies her face. "How does it feel?" She doesn't answer right away. It feels true. They walk toward the truck together, the sounds of Mason's laughter floating behind them. "You once said you stayed because my son laughed in my backyard," she says. He nods. "Yes." "Well," she adds, "meeting his eyes today, I laughed in yours. That's why I'm staying." For a moment, neither of them speaks. The air between them feels different, lighter, but grounded. By the time they leave, Mason is asleep in the back seat, clutching his plastic shovel like treasure. Vanessa drives, glancing in the rearview mirror at his peaceful face. She realizes she isn't thinking about board meetings, quarterly goals, or the image she spent years curating. All she can think about is the dirt still under her fingernails, and the way laughter sounded on that lot. Late the next morning, Vanessa stands barefoot in the sunroom, a mug of tea cooling in her hands. Outside, Mason is on the lawn with the garden hose, water arcing high into the air before splattering down in a glittering spray. "Watch this!" he yells, aiming the stream toward his sneakers. The jet catches his foot, and he squeals, stumbling backward into the grass, laughter spilling out of him in bright, unguarded bursts. Ethan stands a few steps away, arms crossed, letting Mason figure it out without rushing in. When the boy catches his breath, he calls out, "Daddy!" "Ethan, look." The words land in Vanessa's chest like a stone dropped in still water, but to her surprise, there's no sting, just a steady warmth. That evening, Ethan comes in through the back door. Shoes muddy, shirt still damp from the hose. Vanessa is at the kitchen counter, chopping vegetables with surgical precision. "You heard him," Ethan says, leaning against the doorframe. "I did." "Did it hurt?" She sets the knife down and meets his eyes. "No." That's what surprised me. A pause. "Does that make me weak?" He shakes his head. "No. It makes you brave." She exhales slowly. "I've spent so long trying to be everything for him. Mom, dad, guardrail, teacher, therapist." Ethan shrugs lightly. Sometimes kids just want someone who'll sit in the mud and hand them worms. Despite herself, Vanessa laughs. "That's oddly specific." "Because I've done it," he says. Her smile fades into something softer. "You didn't fail him, Vanessa. You carried him through the hardest part. You just forgot you're allowed to pass the baton." She looks down at the cutting board. "What if I don't know how to let go?" "You don't have to," he says. "You just have to let him reach for someone else without thinking it's because you weren't enough." Later that night after Mason's bath, Vanessa tucks him into bed. "Did you have fun today?" she whispers. He nods. "Daddy Ethan is funny." "He is," she agrees. He tilts his head. "He's not my real dad, right?" Her hand stills on the blanket. "No, sweetheart. You had a dad, but he didn't stay." Mason is quiet for a long beat. Then softly, "But Ethan stays." Vanessa's throat tightens. "Yes," she says. "He stays." Downstairs, Ethan is rinsing the dinner dishes, the sound of running water, steady and unhurried. Vanessa steps into the kitchen, leaning against the counter. He asked about his real dad, she says. I told him the truth that he left, but I told him the most important part, too. What's that? Ethan asks, drying his hands. That you stayed. Ethan's jaw works for a moment. I never wanted to replace anyone. I just wanted him to feel chosen. Her voice catches. You did more than that. You reminded him what it feels like to be safe and free and allowed to laugh. She swallows. You reminded me too. He studies her face for a moment, then says quietly, You know why kids laugh the most when they feel seen? Why? Because laughter is trust out loud. The truth of it settles between them like something too delicate to touch, but too real to ignore. The sun is barely above the horizon when Vanessa steps onto the foundation site. The air smells faintly of fresh earth and sawdust, the cement still smooth under her sneakers. Ethan is already there, sitting on an overturned bucket sketchbook balanced on his knee, coffee in hand. A pencil is tucked behind his ear like it belongs there. You're early, he says without looking up. Couldn't sleep, she replies, stepping closer. He nods like he understands, because of course he does. Ethan, she says, voice steady but unsure, I want to help with this. Not just write checks, from the ground up. He glances at her. You want to help build a children's center? I want to build a home, she corrects. For more than one child, for more than one story. He watches her for a long moment, as though he's reading blueprints she hasn't shown him yet. Why? She doesn't hesitate. Because somewhere between my name on Forbes and the echo in my house, I forgot what real living sounds like. And now I remember it's Mason's laugh. It's him saying, Daddy Ethan, without me feeling like I've lost something. Are you asking to be part of the build? He says finally. I'm asking to be taught. Ethan sets the sketchbook down. Would you take direction from me? She blinks. Excuse me. This project needs humility, he says plainly. It needs someone who's not afraid to get dirty, to get it wrong, to get lost. Someone who won't run the first time the walls don't hold. Her chin lifts. You think I'll run? I think you've been running your whole life, he says quietly. The words hit harder than she wants them to. I want to stay this time, she says, voice low, but I need help learning how. He studies her for another moment, then nods. All right, here's the deal. You show up every day, not just with your money, but with your hands, your time, your questions. I will, she says quickly. In return, he adds, I'll teach you how to build something that doesn't need walls to keep people in. That's it. You expected more. I expected a contract. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a single nail, holding it between his thumb and forefinger. This is a promise. We don't build from paper here, we build from choice. She takes the nail from him, the cool metal pressing into her palm like a vow. That afternoon they work side by side. She learns to measure twice and cut once. He shows her how to level a frame and carry weight across her shoulders. She laughs when she misses the nail with the hammer and nearly topples the beam. Rachel stops by with sandwiches, eyebrows raised. Who are you, and what have you done with the woman who used to lose her mind over a chipped manicure? Under reconstruction, Vanessa says simply. Later, they sit on the unfinished porch, just beams and open air. Mason sleeps in Vanessa's lap, his head heavy on her arm. Do you think I'm different now? She asks. Ethan doesn't answer immediately. You're becoming someone new, he says. That's better than being different. Vanessa looks down at her son. He didn't ask for a perfect mother. No child does, Ethan replies. They ask for the one who stays through the imperfect. She leans her head back against the beam. I think I've always been afraid of love without guarantees. That's family, he says simply. And for once, she doesn't argue. The ribbon is nothing fancy, just a strip of white linen tied between two cedar posts at the entrance to the new building. The scent of sawdust and fresh paint hangs in the warm air. It's not finished by any corporate measure, but it's ready in all the ways that matter. Ready to hold laughter. Ready to echo footsteps. Ready to be lived in. Ethan stands beside Vanessa, holding the ceremonial scissors someone insisted they use. Rachel hovers off to the side with a camera, snapping photos, not for press releases, but for the walls inside. This story doesn't need headlines, it needs memory. Mason sits cross-legged on the porch steps, swinging his legs and grinning like he owns the place. Vanessa glances at Ethan. It doesn't look like the original plan. He smiles faintly. That's because somewhere along the way the plan changed. For the better, she says. For the real, he corrects. She turns toward the path lined with flower beds freshly planted by the neighborhood kids who will soon fill this place with noise. She inhales the mingled scents of soil and pine. I used to build houses to sell them, she says quietly. Now, I build them to fill them. Ethan's expression softens. You're not the same woman I met months ago. I'm still learning, she admits. He hands her the scissors. Then let this be your first finished lesson. For a moment, she hesitates. Letting go of things is still something she struggles with, but then she smiles and snips the ribbon. The linen falls to the ground like a quiet exhale. The crowd claps, not loud, not staged, just warm. Rachel wipes at her eyes behind sunglasses. Mason claps the loudest. Can I go inside now? Vanessa laughs. Yes, sweetheart. Go explore. He bolts through the door, arms out like wings. Inside, sunlight pours through skylights, landing on soft couches. Bookshelves low enough for small hands and a mural in bright paint that reads, You're safe here. Vanessa walks the rooms with Ethan, her fingers trailing the door frames. This feels like somewhere I would have needed as a child. That's how I designed it, he says. They stop in the main room, a circle space with shelves of books and a small stage built from reclaimed wood. On the back wall, a cork board is covered in photos from the Build Vanessa hair, wild and covered in paint. Ethan teaching Mason to hold a level, Rachel hauling bags of soil. Vanessa reaches into her tote and pulls out a folded sheet. She pins it in the center of the board. Ethan leans in. It's a blueprint, but not of the building. The title reads, The Blueprint of a Family. Beneath the heading are simple sketches, a hand reaching for a smaller hand, a cup of coffee shared at sunrise, a scraped knee being kissed, a cracked voice saying, I'm sorry, a child laughing, a man staying, a woman letting herself be loved without permission. Ethan stares at it for a long time. This is better than anything I ever designed. You helped me draw it, she says. He turns to her, his eyes steady. You lived it. That evening, after the small crowd is gone and the porch lights flicker on, the three of them sit on the steps sharing foil-wrapped sandwiches. Mason leans against Vanessa's shoulder, already drowsy. Can we live here too? He asks softly. We do in a way, she says. Our hearts do. Mason points at the corkboard through the open doorway. That pictures us. All of it is, Ethan says with a small smile. Vanessa glances at him. I never said thank you. For what? For not walking away the second time. He shakes his head. It was never a second time. Just a pause. I waited until you were ready to walk with me. Vanessa looks down at her son, and now Ethan reaches over his hand, closing around hers. Now, he says, we walk forward. Weeks pass, and the center grows not in square footage, but in heart. New children arrive with shy eyes and leave with louder laughs. Stories are shared in reading corners. Walls get drawn on with chalk. Mistakes are made and forgiven. Vanessa spends her mornings barefoot in the garden, snipping lavender dirt under her nails. She's no longer surprised by it. From the far end of the flower beds, Mason's voice rises in a rush of excitement. Mom, Daddy. Ethan found one, a big one. She looks over to see Ethan kneeling beside him, both crouched over the soil, inspecting a fat, wiggly worm like its rare treasure. Mason bounces on his heels, jeans smudged with mud. Can we name it? He shouts. Only if you promise not to bring it inside this time, she calls back. Ethan glances over his shoulder with a smirk. No promises. Later, they sit on the front steps for lunch, peanut butter sandwiches, orange slices, and lemonade in a mason jar. Mason insists on sitting between them like a bridge. Neither is willing to cross, but both are happy to share. I heard we're getting a piano next week, Vanessa says, sipping from the jar. Donated by a retired music teacher, Ethan replies. She said it's seen more mistakes than a math textbook and still sings. Sounds like all of us, Vanessa says with a small smile. Mason wipes jelly from his chin. And we're loud. That's what matters, Ethan says, and they all laugh, the kind of laugh that comes from knowing you've made it not out of the fire, but through it together. That evening, after Mason falls asleep in a pile of coloring books and toy trucks, Vanessa and Ethan sit on the back porch watching the sun slip into orange. The center glows softly behind them, alive, even in stillness. You know, Vanessa says when we cut the ribbon, I thought that was the ending, wasn't it? She shakes her head. No, that was just the door opening. Ethan is quiet for a long beat. I used to think family was something you're given, not something you make. And now I know it's who stays when it's hard and laughs when it's easy. Vanessa looks out at the dusky sky. I spent years building walls to keep everything in place, but the only thing they kept out was the things that could have saved me. Ethan reaches into his satchel and hands her a folded piece of paper. Inside is a sketch of a modest home, 3 bedrooms, wraparound porch swing set in the back. At the bottom, in his neat handwriting, the house we didn't plan but built anyway. Is this for me? She asks softly. He meets her gaze. No. It's for us. She folds the paper carefully, holding it against her chest. I never imagined this life. Me neither, he says, but maybe the best lives aren't imagined. They're chosen day by day. She leans her head on his shoulder as the porch light flickers on warmer than any chandelier she's ever owned. On a quiet Sunday morning, Vanessa reaches across the breakfast table, takes Ethan's hand, and says simply, I love this. He squeezes her fingers. I love you. No fireworks. No staged moment, just truth. That night she writes herself a letter, not for press, not for show, but for memory. Dear Vanessa, you didn't just build a center. You chose people. You chose presence. You chose love. And now you're home. Upstairs, Mason scribbles on the chalkboard in the main room before bed. We're not perfect, but we stayed. And that's how homes are built. If you like the story, consider sending a super chat to help bring more similar stories. Now click on the video on the screen to hear another story that is equally interesting. Click on the video.